Hello everyone, I'm Aditya, your host for today's session, and we are relaunching our Ignite series wherein we showcase successful lawyers and people who have done law and have excelled in their fields. So we are joined by a very interesting personality in corporate law. His name is Sachin Bhandawat. He is a principal associate with Khaitan and Company, and he will be talking about his life, his his current role, his school, his college, everything in this session. He will talk about how he has successfully managed to become one of the important lawyers in his corporate firm. So, welcome, Sachin Bhandawat. Welcome to the show. I hope you're doing well.
Hi Aditya, it's a pleasure to be on the show and it's great talking to you. Yes, as you rightly pointed out, I'll probably discuss not just my journey. I mean, I'll touch upon my journey, but I'll also, take you through what probably is required or what probably I have experienced as a corporate lawyer, taking, strength from not just my own experiences, but experiences of others also. I mean, it's said that you should learn from your own mistakes, but I always believe that life is too short to make mistakes and learn from them. So you should also learn from other people's mistakes. So yeah, on that somber yet serious note, why don't we take this forward?
Absolutely. So, why don't you take you through your day right now?
So currently, I mean, when the lockdown started, and I'm pretty sure that's probably what you're hinting at. When the lockdown started in March of 2020, I had just gotten married then. I had come back from my vacation, and as soon as I came back, the lockdown started. So there was a lot of uncertainty, even not just among individuals who were, working individually, but also among people who were working with law firms. The uncertainty was owing to the fact that people didn't really know how the pandemic will pan out, whether it will be for the good, whether it will be for the worse, how will businesses be affected. As you would have realized, a lot of law firms, if not a lot, at least some of them preempted and tried to, present not a very rosy picture of what is to come. So that uncertainty, I think, at some level percolated to the lawyers also. So the first few months, rather, in fact, the first 6 months were grappled with this uncertainty. We were all stuck at home. We were trying to manage household chores. We were also trying to give the best at work. If it were a 5-hour work day, it increased to a 6 to 8 hour work day. I'm just giving you examples. Obviously, corporate lawyers do spend a little more time than what I just told you. That is also because we, as lawyers, believe that because of this uncertainty, we should try to deliver more than 100% to the law firm. In a way, it was good. In a way, it was not very good. The good part was that during that 1.5 2 year period, we learned a lot of soft skills, not just in terms of managing houses, doing our own chores, etc., but also in terms of how to assess situations in a virtual world. Lawyers were never faced with this difficulty. To be very honest, everybody insisted on a physical meeting, especially in my line of work, which is private client practice. And I'll probably come to that during the course of this interview. But lawyers were never faced with that uncertainty of not meeting the client in person, not explaining concepts to that individual in person. So that changed. We understood sooner rather than later how this will work. And now we have evolved. In fact, multi-billion-dollar deals have been executed virtually, and it's all very great to now see and understand that as lawyers, and I'm just going to talk about lawyers because that's probably what I do, that lawyers can work from anywhere and work efficiently rather from everywhere. So coming back to the question, the day begins at about 9:30. We have regular team calls because obviously in a virtual setup, everybody is at various places. So we have our team calls where seniors instruct us what to do. We instruct juniors what to do to set the tone for what is required in a day. Typical day starts about 10:15ish after the initial calls get over. And now people have increasingly again realized the importance of not blurring the boundaries at all a lot. They try to end their work day at a reasonable hour, which was not the case again because of the uncertainty during the time of the pandemic. So now weekdays, weekends, that boundary is very clear. Holidays, that boundary is very clear. So people start and end their day per usual. So even though it's a virtual setup and sometimes we work off in like our shots, there is a lot of semblance, there is a lot of order. And I think all of us, including I'm guessing you guys also, have found a method to the madness. And yeah, things hopefully, I don't know about the new variant and all, but hopefully things will go back to how they were before March 2020.
Right, right, right. So thanks a lot for that insight. But to put things slightly shortly, what exactly, or rather, which tone of work would you prefer, a pre-pandemic world or a post-pandemic world? So if I and I am not, I do not want you to give me an answer in a gray. If you were to choose between the two, a pre-pandemic and a post-pandemic work, what would your answer be?
So
And why?
honestly, I genuinely have a gray answer to this. I'm not going to say this because you've told me not to give a gray answer. I'm going to be very upfront about it. What I have realized, at least in the last 2 years, is that there is a very urgent need of a hybrid model of workplace. A lot of law firms, at least the big tier law firms, I don't know much about all of them. I can say for a few I know of, they have introduced or are planning to introduce a hybrid work model, wherein lawyers are required to move to their base location. Obviously, like for instance, I'm from Khaitan, Bombay, so I will have to move to Bombay, but they will be required to come to office only, let's say, 2 days or maybe 3 days or even one day a week. The remaining days they can work from home. If there are obviously meetings, etc., that the client has requested for in person, then you will obviously have to go. So I have realized that working in a hybrid setup may be very beneficial. And I'll tell you the reason also why I'm saying this, okay? Purely working from a work from home model, I personally believe has led to a lack of team integration. People are working now in silos. There is a possibility of duplication of work because we don't know what the other person is doing. Training of juniors and even people at our level is getting a little affected because, in before the pandemic, everybody used to just sit together. Juniors could come to us to understand what is required. We could approach our seniors to understand what is required. So that is the disadvantage of purely a work from home model. However, the disadvantage of a pure non-work from home model or purely physical office setup is that in majority of the cities, people not only tend to waste a lot of time during commute, there are also additional costs probably that the employer faces and even the employee faces. So from a cost perspective and from a flexibility perspective, like for instance, if I'm working today, I have, let's say, a 6 hour day. Typically on a normal day, if I have a 10 hour day, if I'm working in office, if there are 2 hours that I get free during the day, I really can't do anything in those 2 hours. Let's suppose I've sent a draft to a client or to a senior for reviewing. That 2 hours I know the senior will take to review or the client will take to review. Now, in that 2 hours, I'm doing nothing but sitting at office if I have no other work. Here, I can utilize that time to do something else. I can utilize that time just to probably relax or to go for a run or to finish my workout or to finish any other household chores that I'm trying to do. So I've realized that there is ample flexibility that should be provided. So a hybrid model, personally, in my view, works best, at least for us lawyers.
Right, right, right. All right. So, without any further ado, I will straight away move to how your growth has been, what your career trajectory has been. So, tell us the first time you thought that you want to be a lawyer. So, I'm pretty sure it must have happened around 11th or 12th. Tell us how was your school, what was your experience back then, and what made you realize that law is something which you would want to pursue.
So, to be very honest, the idea of becoming a lawyer came much before 11th and 12th, and I think that's partly because of the fact that I belong to a family of lawyers, like my father, my grandfather, my great grandfather, etc. All of them have been lawyers and are lawyers. So the idea came quite early. In fact, my parents insisted that I should choose another profession. Everybody is just becoming a lawyer, but they left that choice up to me. So I think in class 9, probably I had made up my mind that I'll probably want to do law. I hadn't decided corporate law or litigation. Obviously, I didn't even know back then that there are different, aspects of doing law. But I realized that, net, I want to be a lawyer. In fact, in class 10th, I did take a crash course for CLAT. Like, I didn't understand the fact about IITians. If IITians can work for or can take coaching for 2 years, why shouldn't lawyers take coaching for 2 years? I realized in class 10th that CLAT is, back then at least, CLAT wasn't that difficult. Yes, it was difficult, but I personally believe it wasn't very difficult to crack. So I took my first crash course in class 10, and then I did a year-long course in 12th. So that is how my trajectory as a lawyer has been. That is how I made that decision. Schooling, yes, helped me a lot. In fact, I had always wanted to do public speaking back in my school days. I did a lot of public speaking in school days. Obviously, but don't mistake me to say that if you're not a good public speaker, you can't be a lawyer or vice versa. It's there is no relation or no correlation at all. But people typically associate, at least I used to back then, that if you speak well or if you can talk well, you can become a good lawyer. So at least that's where I was coming from. And thereby I did a lot of debates, both English, Hindi, etc. I did a lot of MUNs. In fact, my first ever public speaking experience inter-school was an MUN, which I did around 2008 and 9, as you can see. So that is
So
something.
let me cut you off and show our audience this picture. Can you explain this picture, Sachin? Where was this MUN? What were you? What was your designation, and how was the experience like?
So this, I
And
think,
explain for those people who do not know what MUN is, if you can throw some light on that as well.
yeah. So MUN, simply put, is a Model United Nations. Essentially, it is a mock of the actual UN, wherein organizations conduct various sessions. For instance, they will divide the entire conference into, let's say, a General Assembly, Security Council, HRC,
Various
etc.
organs of
Yeah, the various organs of the United Nations. So essentially, people like us who are students back then, or even non-students, college-going people, are essentially delegates of various countries. They're assigned countries depending on, like for instance, GA will have 190 countries, 180, 190 countries depending on membership. So they assign countries to individuals and they deliberate on key topics that are very current. So that's essentially the rough model that a Model United Nations follow. This is, I think, back in 2008, if memory serves me correct. This was, again, as I just told you, my first outing inter-school as a delegate. I was representing, again, if memory serves me correct, the country of Ghana. Yeah, so that was the country I was representing, and I was a delegate in the General Assembly. So we discussed a lot of issues. One of them, I think, being terrorism. And as you can see, I have 3-4 other schoolmates. We had a lot of fun, and all these people were in different committees. One was, I think, HRC. One was part of the Security Council, and I can't remember the fourth one. But yeah, all 4 of us were part of various committees, and we did have a lot of fun. We had to make country profiles of the countries that we were representing. So this was probably my first out of school experience as a public speaker, as a delegate of another country. We won the award for the best country profile, and this is that memory, and it was a very fond memory rather.
Right. And then in 2010, you got a seat in National Law University, Jodhpur. What was your rank, All India, if I may ask you?
So I think my rank was 305. I had my preference also was NLU Jodhpur. I would have, I think, gotten that only with my rank. I'm just being, to be very honest, I would have gotten that by my rank. But because I'm from Jodhpur, I always wanted to go to NLU Jodhpur. So that is how I got into NLU Jodhpur after clearing CAT. But yeah, I think the rank was 305 again.
And just take us through the first 2 years of your life at NLU Jodhpur.
So life at NLU was very good. I mean, let's put it that way. Overall, it was very good. For me, the added advantage was that home was close. For a lot of people, for a lot of students back then, going to a place which is far away could have been very daunting, or would have been rather very daunting. For me, the advantage was home was close, and I could always go back home and just be with family. However, I actively chose to not be a day scholar. I tried to spend time in the university. I stayed in the campus of the university because I realized after a week or two that the actual experience of a law school can only be obtained if you were not just a day scholar but also a resident of the university. So that was a conscious call that I took. So first 2 years in law school, honestly, I realized that there is a lot more to law than what people initially realize or what people study for CLAT. Yes, there is an argument that can be made that people don't study a lot in universities, or universities are just, there for the heck of it, and it really doesn't add a lot of advantage. I differ slightly there. I honestly believe that my learnings in the university have greatly helped me as a corporate lawyer, not just from a theoretical aspect, but also from a practical aspect. Practical aspect being, moot court competitions that we regularly engaged in, not just intra-college, but also inter-college. The first year moot that we had in the first year of our college, and I'm sure you'll know that, and we participated in that. So from a theoretical perspective, as well as from a practical perspective, right from the word go, first year as well as second year, I tried to do a lot of mooting. I was never fond of publishing papers. I mean, please let's. I mean, there is a lot of advantage to doing that also, but that's something that I didn't choose to do. To be very honest, I chose mooting as probably and debating as something that I wanted to do and I was passionate about. So not just the 5 years, even the first 2 years of law school laid a very strong foundation, at least for me, towards what I wanted to do or what I wanted to become as a lawyer.
Right, right. Speaking of the moot court competitions, can you quickly take me through the kind of moot courts which you have participated in? In fact, let us show this picture of yours to everybody. This is Vienna, if I'm not wrong.
No, this is this Hong Kong actually.
This is this Hong Kong, right?
This was
Take us
again.
through the
This
entire
is
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is again my first moot. I was fortunate. In fact, I would call myself lucky enough to be selected for this moot as my very first moot. I was selected. In fact, I was selected as a speaker, so that was an added advantage, like probably a cherry on the cake. This was again, I think, in my second year of law school, where the team went to this Hong Kong, one of the most prestigious moots, one of the most prestigious moots going around in the world. It's based on international commercial arbitration. Like if the topic is relevant, so that is the whole topic of the moot. We prepared a lot for this moot. In fact, the university also ensured that we do really well in this moot, because it is one of the most prestigious moots that is there going around. So we prepared a lot. We went there, we had our arguments, we did a lot of mooting, even arbitration there, and I think finally we got an honorable mention for the best memorandum. So that was probably one of the first time the university had also gotten some recognition in this Hong Kong. So that was great, and it was a tremendous experience, and I mean, once in a lifetime experience.
Right, right. And speaking of law school, so the first 2 years are more or less, spent in establishing your academics and moot court career. And then in the later 3 years, in fact, in the second semester of your third year, you start taking your internships very seriously. So can you tell me what were the kind of, speaking of these serious internships, which all firms did you go and intern at? And how was the experience? And I am assuming that you got a PPO, so that was through an internship. So how was the entire trajectory like?
So personally speaking, and to each their own, I would put a caveat here. Internships are very important. I mean, in your law school, especially in national law schools, where you do a lot of theoretical learning in classroom, you do a lot of semi-theoretical come practical learning by way of moot courts. Internships give you a very good insight on not just the law, but also the kind of lawyer you want to be. And and we've been very fortunate, Aditya. I mean, in our law school, there were a lot of people to guide us to, understand what you want to do or how you want to do that. So again, taking from my own experience, because my father was a litigating lawyer, my first thought was that I also want to be a litigating lawyer. In fact, my first 2 years of law school, I was convinced that I want to be a litigating lawyer. And let's not kid ourselves, not just first 2 years, but even in my third year or the later half of my third year, I was very convinced that I want to be a litigating lawyer. So therefore, my internships were focused more on litigations. In my first 2 to 3 years, I did my first internship with an NGO, a local NGO in Jodhpur, because obviously it's my first year. So I just wanted to get a not very tedious internship, but just to get a hang of how internships probably are. So we did one with the NGO. I did a few with lawyers. I did another with a litigating law firm. Again, The trajectory being that I first wanted to understand how chambers work of individual lawyers, and then probably how law firms who are doing litigation and core litigation practice, that's what I'm talking about, work when it comes to litigation. That was how I did my first 2 years. In fact, my second, third year, first semester internships were all litigation and law firms who were doing litigation. Then I moved over to corporate law, and there were two reasons for that. First, I wanted to just explore what's out there and how corporate law works and how corporate law firm internships work, just to get a flavor of probably what can be. Again, this is a time that I'm talking about, Aditya, where I was convinced that I want to be a litigator. So this was more to just, test the waters as to what's out there. Second, I had just been introduced to corporate law then. And when I say corporate law, I mean a very small portion of corporate law, which is the Companies Act. So we had just finished with like a course on Companies Act. I did a moot involving Companies Act. So that was my first introduction to Companies Act. And I was like, yeah, this sounds interesting. Why don't we give it a shot? So that's how I did my first corporate internship. Fortunately, I had a decent enough batch rank, so I could get through a few, law firms of my choice. So that's how I progressed to corporate internships. I did one internship with Luthra and Luthra, the then Luthra and Luthra. Then I did one internship with Fox Mandal and Little, and then I did my final internship with Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, the erstwhile Amarchand Mangaldas, Suresh Shroff and Company. And as you rightly pointed out, in my end of my fourth year, I got a pre-placement offer with CAM. So in my fifth year, I really didn't do a lot of internships. In fact, I didn't do any internships. So yeah, that was that.
Yeah. So we'll take our audience through what all Sachin did in his fifth year with his spare time. But before that, I would like you to enlighten with respect to the kind of daily work life you had when you were an intern in the corporate firm. So how was your day like? When did it used to start? How many hours were you supposed to devote? Was it really strict? Was there something wherein you have to give it all in? I think there's this very interesting show, Suits, in which Harvey Specter says to his associate that first impression is the last impression. So all of this, does it matter? How was your life? What all did it take for you to get a PPO from one of the prominent corporate firms? If you can go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah. So, Aditya, when people are in school, and I'm just going to rewind the clock a little, and when they choose, or when they decide to do corporate law, let's suppose I am in class 11th. Let's take, for instance, I'm in class 11th. I decide to do corporate law. I have realized that people again get very disillusioned by the jazz of corporate law. Yes, corporate law is jazzy. Personally, I love corporate law. I love my life as a corporate lawyer. I will not. I'm not going to kid myself here. I really, really do enjoy corporate law, but people do get easily disillusioned by what you affectionately refer to as Suits and all of that. They think that the life of a corporate lawyer is all glitters and all gold. It's not that case. I mean, obviously, there is a good pay package. There is a lot of sophistication that comes with it. There is a lot of client handling, and top clients of the country come, or top business houses of the country come to you. But all this is a silver lining, but at the end of the day, people, and especially when they are in school probably, and when they are deciding to take a career or make a career out of law, they should also understand that all that glitters is sometimes, I'm not going to say all that glitters is not gold, but all that glitters sometimes may just not be gold. So there is obviously a thin line of what you should do or what you shouldn't do. However, and having said all of that, the life of a corporate lawyer during internships, at least, is damn nice, to be very honest. I have seen people who have slogged it out, and again, it's a very personal choice. I used to take my internships, not, I wouldn't say casually, but I would take my internships as internships and not as an associate. So I would start my day when everybody used to start their day. Obviously, there used to be an office come in time that you have to be report by like 9:30. I used to generally be very punctual, because again, as you quoted Harvey Specter, first impressions matter and first impressions continue. So I realized that internships are not just about the work that you put in, but they also check your seriousness. They also check your outlook or what you want to gain out of the internship. So being punctual, delivering work on time is very important. That's number one. Number two, doing good quality work is important. But the concept people have is that if I'm staying in office till like 12 o'clock as an intern, that will give me additional brownie points. That's really not true. Even if you're staying in office till like 12, 1, 2, but you are delivering subpar quality work, nobody's going to give you a PPO. Yeah? Nobody's going to even give you the work, give you their work this next time. So you have to find that balance, not just as an intern, but even as an associate or a partner, probably in a law firm. I've not gotten there, but I mean, I'm just probably guessing this. But you need to find that correct balance, and you need to know how much to deliver, when to deliver, and whether to go all in or whether to not go all in. I have had internships that I had to work till 2, 3 at the night in the night. I used to come back home at like 3:30, and I used to again report back at 9 o'clock. There used to be a few days, but that is a conscious choice that I did because it was required. Other internships, and I'm not going to name, I'm not going to take names here, but there were a few internships where a few friends of, where I and a few friends of mine took a 2 to 3 hour lunch break. So that's how it is. And that's how you need to progress, and that's how you need to decide priorities. Some days will be good, some days will be bad, some days you'll have a lot of work, some days you won't have a lot of work. So it's all about managing what you do as an intern.
Right. And speaking of corporate law, can you go ahead and quickly throw some light on the broad categories in corporate law?
So corporate law, and I'm not, and law firms especially, and I'm going to talk about a full service law firm. Let's suppose a Khaitan, for instance, the firm where I work at. For a full service law firm, there are a lot of departments. There are a lot of divisions. You have the tax, direct as well as indirect tax. You have the competition. You have real estate. You have all of that. So there are a lot of departments, including litigation, etc. Purely corporate law is a separate department altogether. To give you a little perspective, my team has around 63 to 65 lawyers, just my team. And there are 4 such corporate teams in Khaitan and Company. Other teams are there, and this is just the Bombay office. So the perspective I'm trying to give you is that maybe 10, 5, 7 years ago, corporate law just used to be understood as Companies Act and probably associated legislations. Now, corporate law is moving towards specialization internally. At least that's what I believe. And I'm just going to give you what my personal views are on this. People are now doing specialization in corporate law. For instance, there are people who are now specializing in mergers and acquisitions, simply to say that they specialize in one company acquiring or merging with another company. So that's their core area of specialization under corporate law. All of it is governed by Companies Act and other associated legislation, but pure merger and acquisition. To counter that, there are people who are probably specializing in private equity. Private equity is simply where an investor is investing in a company. There is no merger, there is no acquisition. They're just acquiring stake in terms of shareholding. It's not a transfer of any asset, but not a transfer of any actual assets or liabilities. So that's private equity for you. Venture capitals, which are now the in thing, seed funding, angel investors. Those are people who do private equity. Now there are a lot of people, and they are including me, not a lot of people rather, but there are some people who under corporate law specialize in private client practice. That is what I do, where I do estate succession planning, foreign exchange, how to ensure that individual have offshore assets, onshore assets, how can they manage that, setting up trust structures, doing interplay with the tax as well as trust law. So corporate law essentially now is not just limited to, your core generalization. The generics are now moving to very, very specific area of corporate law. And that's probably even lawyers who just joined the firm. And for people out there who are about to join law firms or who are looking at joining law firms, it's important sooner rather than later. I'm not going to say this is an urgent requirement. The first day you enter law firm, you just don't walk up to your partner and say, no, I want to do only private equity or I want to do only strategic investments. But the world is moving towards specialization in corporate law itself. So that's probably my 2 cents on what corporate law is all about.
Right. Speaking of niches in law, you are specializing in private client practice. Can you go ahead and talk about a very interesting or a peculiar case which you have handled? provided of course it is in public domain, and not to get into too too much specifics in the,
Aditya, none of
and
my
speak a little bit about private client practice as well, just to give our audience some perspective.
Sure, sure. So none of my matters are in public domain. Thank God for that. The whole idea of us as private client lawyers is to ensure that none of our matters get reported. Unlike my colleagues in who are doing other kinds of corporate law, including as I just said, mergers, acquisition, private equity, strategic investments, etc. Their matters are reported, and that's what brings them glory. For us, the knight in the shining armor is the fact is newspapers not reporting us. So I mean that's how we want our practice to be. So private client practice, essentially, as I was just talking about before I go into specifics of a matter, is essentially individual driven work. That is something that I chose very early in my career. I don't know, I didn't choose it, rather it was something that I was thinking about, and a lot of my seniors helped me understand it, and they told me that this is an up and coming area of practice, why don't you give it a shot? I gave it a shot for 6 months. In my previous firm, the policy was to rotate for 6 months in various teams to get a flavor of each and every aspect of law. I rotated in this in this area. I really liked it, so I went ahead and did it. Realized that it was a very great practice area, because I dealt with individuals. It wasn't abstract. It wasn't like one company taking over another company. You were talking in absentia. You were throwing numbers like 20,000 crores, 50,000 crores, and all of that. Yes, I deal with big numbers, but not as bigger numbers as them, because those numbers that I deal with essentially are individual centric. So that is essentially private client practice. We help individuals not only manage or create their wealth, but also to ensure that they retain their wealth in a legal as well as tax efficient manner, not just onshore, but also offshore. What you would have realized, Aditya, and a lot of talk has been happening even for the big shots in this country, there is increasingly, and at least I have seen that in the last 2-3 years, a lot of people are migrating abroad. A lot of Indians and HNIs, high net worth individuals or ultra high net worth individuals, are migrating abroad for better opportunities, business, ease of doing business, and all of that. We also help these individuals, and that is where our role comes in, wherein to make offshore base, how to create offshore base for such individuals, how to create onshore base, how to manage assets. I also deal with business succession. I also deal with family succession, as to how promoters want to choose their next generation, how to lead their business, how individuals want to ensure that their assets pass on from one generation to another, family disputes, etc. So that's another area of my practice. So trust law, estate and succession planning, business succession and corporate succession, all these are facets of private client practice, including foreign exchange and other allied laws. So that's the whole gamut of private client practice. Obviously, I mean it's a little too much to probably talk about in right now. But anything and everything that an individual or a promoter or a high net worth individual wants to be done, we are their go-to person. In a nutshell, that's what PCP is.
Right.
Interestingly, we've handled a lot of matters, a lot of very, very complicated matters. I have recently handled one client's multi-jurisdictional estate planning cum child custody cum divorce matter. So all of it were together. Client was an Indian. He wanted to move abroad. Then there was a child custody and a divorce matter that the same client was embroiled into.
So in that case, you'll have to read the real estate laws. You'll have to read the family laws and a lot of migration laws as well. So
absolutely,
mix of every laws here.
Absolutely, mix of not just Indian law but even offshore law. And because the clients were Indian who had moved offshore, there we had to even delve into private international law. Now, when I studied private international law in law school, I realized that this will never help me in life. What conflict of laws? Exactly, that's a different ball game altogether. Koi relation hi nahi hota. But I was like, what conflict of laws? Yaar? Who gets into these conflict of law situation? Why will a court in another country ever look at Indian laws when deciding a dispute? It's not going to happen. For the first time in my life, I actually realize that private international law is a thing, is a legit thing, and I saw it being applied. The courts in the offshore jurisdiction, what I'm talking about, and I can't obviously divulge too many details, but the courts in that offshore jurisdiction, because the clients were governed by Indian law, actually applied the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act to decide who to give the custody of the child to. Absolutely. Interestingly, under Hindu law, it says that a mother will have a custody of a child until the child is 5 years old, but the natural guardian of the child will be the father. And talking about Hindu law. So there the father wanted the custody of the child because he said, I'm the natural guardian. What we were trying to argue was that, listen, you may be the natural guardian, but the child is not 5 years old. So the custody has to be given to the mother. The court actually relied on this aspect of Hindu law to give a decision in our favor. So that was one very interesting matter, and we were doing some estate planning also because the client was moving abroad. So very interesting matter, and many such interesting matters we handle for individual clients. So yeah, life is fun, new problem every day.
Right. Speaking of life as fun, I will take you guys through some of Sachin's pictures which he has shared with us. Yes, talk about this picture. Here you are with, I think this is your team, and you guys are celebrating something. Diwali, is it? What is it?
Yeah, so these are all, as you would have imagined, post not the pre-pandemic photographs. So our team essentially, because again, as I said, it's a very, very large team. So we do a lot of such, activities. Every festival, rather. I mean, be it Diwali, be it Holi, be it Christmas. Christmas is also a very big affair. Every festival is celebrated in the firm. So we all come together, we take some time off during the day, and these are all working days that I'm talking about, where people designate 1 hour or 2 hours, irrespective of how much work you have, unless obviously it's an extremely urgent deliverable. People generally take some time off and commingle with each other. They we go for office lunches, and this picture is of office, obviously, where we order in lunch for the entire team. We sit together and we have a great time. In fact, before the pandemic, every Monday we used to have early morning meetings, and when I say early morning, 10:30 meeting, where the entire team of 65 people, mind you, used to sit in one room, discuss legal updates that had happened in the past week, and then have breakfast together. So that used to be an affair every Monday. And this picture is just a depiction of how law firms are. It's not all as bad as people project it to be. It may not be even all as good as what I'm projecting it to be, but somewhere in the middle, I think, is where law firms fall. But
Also, Sachin, can you take us through the hierarchy in the firm? So how do you start? You start with a A0 associate, if I'm not.
Yeah, so you start with an intern. Right. As you know, we all start as interns. Right. There are a few firms that still have the paralegal concept, where people are as paralegals before they join as associates. Typically,
so also with the designation, I would want you to go ahead and talk about the salaries, as this is the main point of consideration for a lot of people to join law. So please throw some light there as well. And just give me a ballpark range. I'm not talking about your salary. I know you are minting a lot of money.
In fact, I was coming to that. I can't give you a ballpark range as such, because it's been a really, really long time since I drew an associate salary, as like a junior associate salary. So paralegals, I don't know. Some firms do pay paralegal, some firms don't pay paralegal. So it's a very it's a very gray area as such. I hope that most firms do pay their paralegal. So that's like just one position above an intern, which you are associate with the firm. So that's that. But typically firms start from an associate, where you start as an A0, you then go to A1, A2, A3, a typical associate track. And please, I'm just
be signifying the
years. So A0 is when you just join, then A1, A2, and A3, a typical associate track. And I'm just giving you very what generally firm follows. Every firm will have different policies, different strategies. It all depends on how good or not so good you are. But a typical associate track is for 4 years. At an associate, I drew my first salary was not great, because that was a time when I probably realized that I should have gotten a lot more, but that's fine, because as soon as my first year got over, the bands changed, so salaries got increased about 20 to 30%. And recently, very very recently, in March of 2020 and later in like August of 2021 also, firms have given a lot of increments. So really, since the time I have joined law firms, up in addition to the yearly increments, there have been a change in bands altogether. And when I say band, I mean the typical band in which associates will be paid, those have changed. So you're not just getting increments, but your bands have also changed. So a typical associate track will last for 4 years. Then you become a senior associate. Senior associate.
Before that, let's get back to the specifics of salary. So around 14 to 16 lakhs is what I'm expecting.
14 to 16 lakhs, definitely, as a starting associate of a top tier law firm. And let's just probably just discuss top tier law firms. 14 to 16 lakhs per annum as a starting associate salary is
4 years of experience. I'm looking at somewhere around 25.
25 to even 30 probably, if you are if you can negotiate well, or if you're doing good job. So 25 to 30 is probably the typical range. That's typical ranges for your associate level. Sometimes people go from an associate to like probably a senior associate designate, or some firms have a policy where they don't fully promote you to a senior associate. They just take some time to evaluate, or similarly for a principal associate. But let's not go into minute details. Associate track lasts for 4 years. Typical salaries, as you just pointed out, range from about 14 to maybe even 30 lakh rupees per annum. Then you go to your senior associate position. That's like your sandwich position, where you have to execute transactions also, where you have to review work of your juniors also. The most work that you will do in your law school probably is when you're a senior associate. You have principal associates and partners over you who will keep giving you work, and then you'll have associates whose work you'll have to review. But senior associate lasts for almost around 2 years. Again, typical time tracks. That's a very generic view of what I'm telling you. Salaries are again in the range of, you can expect to make somewhere around 40-ish as a senior associate. Again, top tier law firms will give you somewhere around that, depending on your band. Most of it is, again, law firms divide their salaries into two aspects, and you'll know this, is you get a fixed component every month. And then year end, every March, or sometimes even twice a year, you get something called as a bonus. Right. So your salary is bifurcated into your bonus component and your fixed component. As an associate, you tend to get a better percentage as a fixed component rather than a bonus. In fact, in my first year, I got 90% fixed, and let's suppose my salary component is $100. I got 90 rupees as fixed during my component was 90 fixed and 10 bonus. As you move up the ladder, this bonus component becomes more and more. In fact, as partners, and I've never drawn a partner salary, is what I've been made to understand. Typically, you get 50-50. Wherein if your salary is 100 rupees, you will get 50 as your fixed component, and the other 50 is your bonus.
So speaking of a senior lawyer, you get around 40 upwards. So 40 to 50 is somewhere, I'm guessing. And then
as a senior associate, yes.
At your level, at a premium law firm, anything
you'll get around 60. Like I'm talking about PA3, PA1 to 40 to 60 is your typical range for a principal associate.
Partners get 70, 80.
Partners will get 70, 80 above. And then sometimes you get equity, and then you share in the profits of the firm. So if the firm is making a significant amount of money, partners will get a significant amount of money. So all of that will keep happening. So as a principal associate, you get somewhere around 40 to 60, depending on the work you do and how the market, etc. is. And then you will make tons more as a partner. So again, I'm caveating this to say that these are very typical salary bands. These are nothing set in stone. You may get 35-40% more than what I just quoted. You may even get 50% less than what we've been just discussing. This is in no indication of the firm that I am at, and no indication of the firm that I have been. These are all figures that I have gotten from the market, and we do a lot of research. Trust me, Aditya, as lawyers, you'll know that money is a very, very important motivator. So we do a lot of research. So these are all typical numbers. So yeah, your principal associate track, coming back to the track, then from a senior associate, you go to a principal associate, and then from principal associate, you go to a partner, equity partner, senior partner, and if fortune favors you, a managing partner.
Right, superb. So thanks for that insight into the hierarchy. Now, I would like to understand, yes, and having said that, it's very difficult to sort of, compartmentalize these traits. But can you go ahead and enlighten or throw us, throw some light on the kind of traits which you're looking at to excel in corporate laws? So broad traits, and I know it's a very vague question, so to speak. But then, yeah, I want you to go ahead and talk about some prerequisites which are very basic to excel in this field.
Yeah, so not very difficult to compartment, not very difficult to put traits together, and this is what at least the pandemic has taught all of us as lawyers, that you just don't need hard skills when it comes to your knowledge of the law, etc., but you need a lot of soft skills. You need a lot of traits that otherwise were never associated with lawyers. Just to probably bifurcate, and again I'm going to go designation wise, as probably an associate, you need to be hardworking. You need to put in the hours. And I'm not going to mince words here. Sometimes it may get overwhelming. Sometimes you may think that, putting in 10 to 14 hours a day on a consistent basis over a week or a month, maybe, or even a quarter is not sustainable. I agree. And I understand that. But as a junior associate, that's probably how it is. Obviously, times are changing. For the betterment, people are talking about and genuinely implementing, having better boundaries and having probably a better work-life balance. So that is very important. But as a junior associate, I think the two most important traits that you can probably have is to be hardworking and probably to be sincere towards your work. That's just about it. People don't expect you to have any other soft skills. People don't expect you to manage team. People don't expect you to run transactions or have client facing interactions. All they expect you to do is to be diligent towards your work. If there is a work product that has to be delivered, your primary duty is to ensure that you deliver it to the best of your ability in utmost sincerity. There will be mistakes, obviously. That's why seniors are there to correct it. But for all of you guys who are looking to join law firms, your first 4 years, you'll have to put in the hours. You will have to be respectful towards the craft, and you will have to be sincere and dedicated towards whatever role that you are in. That's probably, I think, and I'm being very generic here. Don't mistake my being generic to the fact that I don't have any traits, but those are probably, in my view, the most important traits that I look for, at least in my juniors.
Right. All right. So with that said, it was lovely interacting with you, Sachin. We had too many insights with respect to the kind of school activity right from the beginning. You talked about how you experienced MUNs, how you transformed yourself as a law student, and eventually bagging a PPO in a top tier firm, and being there where you are currently. So thank you so much for joining the session. Before we part ways, I would request you to go ahead and give some kind of advice to all the speakers or rather all the people who are watching us. Anything which you would want to go ahead and talk about. So,
to be very honest, Aditya, I mean, I am in no position to give advice. I mean, I genuinely am in no position to give advice. The only thing that I can just say from experience, and this is, please, it's not a word of advice or anything, but the only thing I can say from experience is to always be true to yourself and to always ensure that whatever you're doing, I mean, not just as a corporate lawyer, but even as in any area of life, whatever you're doing, you enjoy it. And I know it's a very cliched thing to say, but at least I have realized that I do enjoy my job as a corporate lawyer. And that's probably because I genuinely wanted to do this and I genuinely am doing what I'm doing. But if you don't enjoy it, those 14 hours will look like 28 hours, or even those 5 hours will look like 28 hours. So go ahead and do what you enjoy. There is no right or wrong. If you've joined a law firm and you realize after 2 days or even after 5 days that it's not for you, then it's absolutely okay to be honest to yourself, to be true to yourself that this is not what I want to do. You're doing litigation, you think that no, that's not for you. It's absolutely okay. Be true to yourself and probably just enjoy what you're doing. You be passionate in what you're doing, and you'll go places and you'll excel much more than what you ever anticipated.
All right, all right. So we wish you all the best for your future ahead. We would love you to come back and talk to us again. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much for joining us. It was
Thank you
lovely.
so much for having me, Aditya. It's a pleasure.
All right, all right. Take care. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much.